Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Michael Noland here. You know what? Tonight I'm going to do three things. I'm going to cover a statement by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a statement that explains how they go through their induction process and why. We're also going to be taking a look at the 2023 inductees and how the voting is going so far, who's ahead of the pack, who's trailing behind, and finally, we're going to take a look at the secretive nominating committee for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All right, so over the years, the nominating committee's secret identity has been more or less exposed, a bit anyway, but a lot of us don't know who these people are. Oh yeah, there's some of them that kind of come to the cream of the crop or rise to the top in our collective consciousness. Steve Van Zandt from the E Street Band. Of course, he's best friends with Bruce Springsteen, who is best friends with who else? How about Jan Wenner? And we even have Paul Shaffer. Paul Shaffer, no really, Paul Shaffer is on the Rock and Roll nominating committee. Now, Paul Shaffer is an excellent musician. I loved him on the Dave Letterman show, that whole thing, but really? This is the best we can do? And of course, we've already discussed that, well, I guess Billy Joel is an honorary committee member because evidently all he has to do is write a letter to the committee and Warren Zevon is in like a bullet. Now, I'm not against Warren Zevon being nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've already stated that. I think he's an excellent choice, but it's how he was nominated that interests me. Now, before I get further into this nominating committee, and we're going to get deeper into it, folks, don't worry about that. I did want to cover this statement that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame made as to how they go about choosing inductees for this sham. All right, folks, so I've brought up this article and I'm going to turn here and read it. Just a real quick statement. And I want to see if you can catch what they're talking about here because I think it's a load of bull. But here's what they had to say. They said that rock and roll had deep roots in rhythm and blues and country music. They went on to say that rock music is not defined by any one genre, but rather a sound that moves youth culture. Well, we know rock and roll moved a lot of youth culture back in the day, don't we? But is that really what rock and roll was all about? Now, they made this statement right after they inducted Dolly Parton. Now, Dolly Parton, I've stated this many times. I think she's a wonderful singer, a wonderful songwriter for a country artist, right? And guess what? When she was in her prime, her main audience wasn't the youth of the nations. It was the housewives at the time. She fit that middle of the road category perfect, darting in and out of country, in and out of pop, almost to pop rock at times, didn't she? And her average fan was well into their 20s, probably into their 30s and 40s, if you ask me. So this whole statement doesn't make sense to me. And I'll tell you why it doesn't make any sense to me. They said it can't be defined by any one genre. Then why is the term rock and roll in the title for this show, for this award ceremony, for this sham of an organization? I mean, on one hand, they're identifying it as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the genre of rock and roll, correct? Now, all of us rock fans know there are many subgenres to rock and roll. You would have thought they would have been smart enough to use that term, but they didn't. But at least they were being more honest this way. Okay, so with all of that in mind, I've now brought up the list of the current inductees for 2023. I'm going to go ahead and turn around and read this list and let you know where they are as far as votes go, okay? So in the number one position, Cyndi Lauper with 253 plus thousand votes. Number two, George Michaels with 251, almost 252,000 votes. So he's nipping at her heels. In the third position, Warren Zevon with 220,000 plus votes. Fourth place, Soundgarden, 167,000 votes. 5th place, Iron Maiden, 165,000 votes. 6th place, Willie Nelson, 156,000 votes, almost 157. In 7th place, Joy Division, New Order, 138,000 votes. 8th place, Kate Bush, what a travesty, 126,000 votes. 9th place, Sheryl Crow, 119,000 votes. 10th place, Rage Against the Machine with 118,000 votes. 11th place, The Spinners with 109,000 votes. 12th place, The White Stripes with a measly 83,000 votes. And 13th place, Missy Elliott with 64,000 votes. And 14th place, A Tribe Called Quest with 55,000 votes. Now, there's some great rock acts on that list, but notice how low they are. And notice who's in the top 2 spots. Now, I've already said I'm not too upset with Cyndi Lauper's nomination. She's more of a pop artist to me than just pure rock and roll, but at least that makes some sort of sense, doesn't it? But George Michael's, to me, is 100% a pop artist. And to me, him to be on this list at all makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There are bands on this list that shouldn't be on this list this early, as well as acts that shouldn't be on it at all. Missy Elliott doesn't make sense to me. The Spinners makes absolutely no sense to me if we're going to talk about genres. And by the way, if it's a matter of what moves the youth, really? Cyndi Lauper is still moving the youth of the world today? The Spinners are still moving the youth? You know, their own statement tells you that they are talking through several orifices all at once, aren't they? All right, so now we're going to get into some of these nominating members, okay? Other than the ones we've already talked about, the rock and rollers in the group. Now, before we do that, though, I want you guys to remember, we've already talked about how Jan Wenner has an iron grip on this association, how his next in line kind of guy, John Sykes, is connected not only to him, but to Madison Square Garden Entertainment, Bono, and his company that sends things to Africa, you know, the same company that's been criticized by Africa, and how he was connected to, guess what, MTV and VH1. Starting to smell a rat? All right, so first up, Sandy, if I'm getting this name pronounced wrong, forgive me, Sandy, but Sandy Alouette. She's a TV insider industry leader associated with not only MTV, but VH1 as well. And what about John Landau? You know, Bruce Springsteen's manager, he's on there as well. Or how about Nathan Brackett, former editor to Rolling Stone magazine and Amazon Music. Oh, but wait, there's more. How about another manager for a band? Because we know how pure and wonderful managers are. How about Cliff Bernstein, the manager for Metallica? And then there's Bill Flanagan, a writer for Rolling Stone, also known, and they don't mention specifically, and I didn't have the time to look it up, but being involved in television and radio. Gee, I wonder what channels those are. Oh, and this ought to get you. How about Reginald C. Dennis, an editor for Source Magazine, a hip-hop magazine, folks. That's what this guy brings to the table. How about yet even another clone from Rolling Stone magazine, a senior editor this time? How about David Frick? And then there's Judy Gerson, you know, the head of Universal Music Publications, the second largest music publisher on planet Earth, right beneath Sony. And then we have Amir Questlove, I think that's how you'd pronounce his name. He has a question mark in front of it. I knew where I was going as soon as I saw the name. You know, he's the drummer for a hip-hop group, and he's on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominating committee. And then there's Amanda Petrusik, journalist and critic for the New Yorker magazine. Enough already, my head's ready to explode. But there's more. Rick Krim has been the chairman of the board for this committee, and guess what? He has connections to MTV and VH1. And of course, Anthony DeCurtis, writer for Rolling Stone magazine. Now, these are the ones that I could actually find some information on. There are still others where you can barely find out anything from them, but you know what? When you smell smoke, there's probably a little fire, and you guys are quite aware of what I have felt about this lockdown by Jan Wenner and his cronies on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as an idea, I love, but it's gone so far beyond what it was intended for, if you ask me. All right, so I've grabbed a list here, just a long list of artists who have not made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm going to list some that I feel should be there, and then I'm going to read a few who these people seem to think should be on it. And guess what? They're just as wrong in what they want as the nominating committee is, in my opinion. All right, so here are some of the bands that haven't made it. How about Alice in Chains, the B-52s, Bad Company, Beck, Big Star, Billy Idol. We have Black Flag, Blue Oyster Cult, all right, Captain Beefheart. We also have, let's see here, Devo, Faith No More, Graham Parsons, Harry Nilsson, The Guess Who. Can you imagine that? And at the time of this, they also said Iron Maiden, The Jam. How about Jan and Dean? All right? Jan and Dean is not on this list. I can't believe it. Jane's Addiction, Jethro Tull, Kate Bush, of course, but she's been nominated for this year. King Crimson. Can you believe that? All right. And then we've also got, let's see, Motorhead. We have the New York Dolls. Not to mention Procol Harum, Rage Against the Machine. Can you believe this? Smashing Pumpkins, Sonic Youth. All right. Soundgarden, of course, they're on this year. Stone Temple Pilots, Tommy James, and the Shondells. War. They got Warren Zevon here, but again, this year he's on. And just a ton. Ecstasy. I mean, tons and tons of bands. But here are some of the artists that they suggest should be on there as well as these bands, if you can believe this. They have the Carpenters. They have Cher here, right? Dick Dale's not on the list. I mean, talk about the man who invented surf guitar, and he's not on the list of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I can't believe it, folks. But there's other artists. Mariah Carey, they're suggesting that would do me in. If Mariah Carey gets nominated for this clown of a show, I won't know what to do, folks. I mean, you've got Motley Crue. You know what I feel about Motley Crue, and yet I would rather have Motley Crue on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than half the people that are on the induction list and who are currently being voted on. Mariah Carey. Oh, Lord, you're gonna do it to me, aren't you? All right, so with all of this in mind, doesn't this paint just a bit of a different picture for you? This organization is more connected to New York and LA than anything else. It is a West Coast, East Coast conglomeration of power, and the whole thing consists of power brokers as well as people who aren't even related to the idea of what true rock and roll is. Don't forget the sins of both VH1 and MTV. They go back to the very beginnings of both of those programmings. And as the connections have all kind of come to the fore over the years, we see that this is nothing more than a good old boys club, isn't it? It's not whatever genre that moves the youth. It's whatever freaking genre sells the most, which makes this whole sham of a show, he said real quickly, a sellout. So my question to you guys, with all of this information, are you even going to watch this show? Do you even care who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anymore? And if you do, what can we do to save it? You know what I'm thinking is, let's go the route of at least having the musicians being on it only. I'll even take Paul Schaefer under those conditions. But these music industry insiders, they are the very people that brought in the A&R man that ruined bands in the 80s. Remember them? These brand new experts who would sign a band, pay them pennies on the dollar, and tell them and work them to death and tell them he knew what was best for them, and he was just some guy barely out of short pants. All right, folks, that's the video for tonight. Thanks for bearing with me. If you enjoyed it, if you got something out of this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm better identify the channel. And if you haven't had a chance to, join the channel, to subscribe to the channel, it's easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, as we call it, and then tap that top bell icon, and you'll be notified of all my future videos, not only on classic rock, not just on rock and roll, but on the rock and roll as we know it today. And sometimes it's almost unrecognizable, isn't it? All right, I'm Michael Nolan. This is The Bottom Line. Together, guys, we are the tribe, and I'll see you in my next video.